The Scream Kings are in no way responsible for any encounters with the paranormal, extraterrestrial abductions, eldritch insanity, hauntings, curses, hexes, demonic possessions, cryptozoological sightings, or any loss of sleep that results from listening to this podcast.
This is the Scream Kings podcast. I'm Nathaniel Darkish, and today I am with Elizabeth Suggs. Elizabeth, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, everyone. So I'm a writer and an editor. I recently published a book called Collective Darkness. It's a horror anthology with 11 other authors. I have a publishing house with Collective Tales Publishing and also an editing business for editing me. So doing a few things, but yeah, all of it comes together in the end.
To be clear, is everything that you're doing all horror related in terms of your writing and your editing, or is it a little bit of everything?
So I try to keep it in the speculative fiction. With Collective Tales Publishing, that's just, we're publishing different anthologies. So next one will be fantasy, and then after sci-fi and dystopia, and then horror. So it kind of goes in like a pattern. But I want to always keep horror as like a main focus too. So even though horror, we just had Collective Darkness published, and we won't have another one published for a little while, it's going to be an In-Between Darkness, which is going to be a shorter anthology, but it'll be like a quick bite you can have just to have other submissions for that. So always keeping it up, because I love horror, but I know I have a lot of writing friends who like different genres. So they like to taste different things, right? If genre was a food, but yeah,
it's a metaphor. We're literary like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I definitely have lots more questions about the horror anthology, but before we get into that, just kind of want to get a better feel for you as a horror fan. So how did you get into the horror genre?
Oh, I've been writing horror for so long. Maybe I'm slightly demented. I don't know. But one of my favorite authors is H.P. Lovecraft, and his story, The Outsider, just, I know it's not one of his scariest, and we can talk about his scariest later, but that one just hit me so hard, and I'm just like, I need to write horror, and also having just like those horrific thoughts. And so I've always been attracted to horror, like in all genres, but with books I have the most power. So I've been doing it for years. Yeah.
So just kind of just always been ingrained in what you're doing then.
No matter what I do, it's always, there's a little horror and everything.
Well, I know exactly what that's like. So I guess along those lines, what is The Outsider your very favorite piece of horror fiction?
That one is one of my favorite ones in H.P. Lovecraft, just because it spoke to me so much. Just this, like, that isolation and the monstrosity at the end, finding out. I don't want to spoil too much, but just like finding out a monster. But another one would be in the H.P. Lovecraft would be the Color from Outer Space, because it's, I don't know, it has to deal with kids, so it's like messed up in another way. And I also like Edgar Allan Poe. Like, these are like classics, right? I don't know, there's just something about the classics that it's refreshing compared to some of the other stuff nowadays. Like, you get more contemporary and it's fun in different ways, but there's like an artistic, poetic way that they word things that really attracts me to them.
That's fair. I mean, they're classics for a reason. I definitely appreciate both Lovecraft and Poe. They're incredible wordsmiths.
Yeah.
And yeah, I actually, so with the high school English, I teach Cask of Amontillado. So I was very excited to dive into some Poe.
That's so cool, and it's so relevant.
Yes, exactly. That's what's so great about horror. It's always relevant. It's there's always a reason to be scared, and always it's fantastic. Okay, well, let's dive into this anthology. So, Collective Darkness. Tell us about it.
Oh man, this is a 2-year project. I actually didn't know how hard it would be to create an This is my first anthology, so I was head editor, head producer. I created this. Just decided to start it. So I Yeah, I was like herding cats at one point. I've said that a few times before, where it's just like, because it's all these different authors who have, either have been published or haven't, and so they don't know my style. So that was a really interesting experience. But I love all the stories. I'm a little biased because I love my brother's story a lot, but his is Feast, and it's like with this disturbing monster and a mom and daughter. But I just like that disturbing aspect. I think Figure in the Mirror is another disturbing one I like. They're all great. It's like a mother, though. You love all of them, but you have favorites without saying anything.
So, was there like a particular theme, or was it just horror generally, or was there like a
Mhm.
more specific like theme within horror that you were working around, or?
Right. So it was darkness. It's the that hidden realm, like the horrific type of darkness that you can find, under the bed or in your mind. So it's a little more vague compared to some, but I really like that opening up of just like the possibility, because we were able to get a lot of great work. There was another one called Padua's Eyes, where it had to do with a sparkly vampiric pony. So, that's like the complete opposite of darkness, right? But then there's the vampires, and then there's like these, caves that they go into and they dwell in like this darkness. So there was a lot of creativity with that. But there's a lot of psychological. So if you like psychological horror, you're gonna like this anthology. So there's a pretty steady theme of that in darkness.
One thing I know that you've mentioned just from our conversations, that this is a Utah authors. Is everyone from Utah?
Yep. Yeah, they're all local authors, all local editors. We're also creating an audiobook. It's in the process. It's almost done. And those are also all local narrators. I wanted to keep it really local. We might expand to different authors in different regions, but I want to always have local in the anthologies, because, you got to keep that local flavor alive. It's the most important thing, right? So,
Well, as a local Utah horror writer myself, I definitely appreciate that, because I feel like people don't necessarily associate Utah with horror, which I think is a shame, because we actually have a lot of really impressive talent here. Are there any particular writers that you want to highlight from the anthology that we should be looking out for, especially?
well, in the definitely Edward Suggs for Feast, Jonathan Reddock in Padua's Eyes, Brandon Prowse for The Figure in the Mirror. If you want to do, and then Jen Elwyn for Poltergeist, and it's like two different words as a play on words. And then, you could also look at mine. It's always weird self-promoting, but it's Into the Dark.
There's no
And
harm in shameless self promotion.
it's, yeah, I feel so weird every time I do it. There's like that little part of my mind. I know this is like a problem with a lot of authors too, because doing the anthology, I'm trying to get people to learn how to market themselves. That's another way to like, they do these anthologies and then they'll know what to expect for having a novel, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm like trying to get them to market and just like tell people like be excited, and they are excited, but it's weird to be like, yeah, I'm so great, but it's like it's okay to say that, and I mean I tell them to do that, but I also have a problem with it too, so I get that hesitation.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe the key is just to be excited about the piece rather than about yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're here promoting this collection and your story and all of
Thanks.
that. So I really kind of want to know what really goes into the process of like making an anthology. How are you choosing the pieces? Was it just that you had writers that you wanted to feature, or was it kind of more that you had some submissions? Kind of what was the process like of kind of developing what pieces would be in this anthology?
So for this anthology, it was more, finding the right pieces that fit the theme and just finding the right people. For the following anthologies, though, they have blind judges, and it's gonna all just be more kind of like how we have in the horror anthology, the one I'm editing, which you're in, and that one was more also blind judge, right? And I like that aspect because it kind of, it gets the best pieces without bias, because I don't want to be biased in this. Having the Collective Darkness, I think we made some really great pieces, but I've also was new to finding anthology pieces, so I didn't know, like I had done judging, but I didn't know so much on that. So I really like that. So that's what we're doing for following anthologies. But,
Okay. So I guess what has been the sort of response that you've gotten to the anthology?
we got bestseller for new releases in the very beginning, so that was really exciting.
Nice.
We got a lot of hype, and we still have a little, like the hype is still going. It's a constant. It's like a very. It's a steady, so it's pretty exciting. We're expanding our Instagram and Facebook group and doing a lot of social media, especially nowadays, because we were gonna do the FearCon, but that got canceled, and so we're trying to do conferences, but you just can't now, like in this year. So we've been doing a lot of social media, and that's helped like keep us steady, because it's like conferences. Social media, if you can use it as if it's like a virtual conference, just like talking with people about their stuff, your stuff, and
Along those lines, this is definitely a way to bring this anthology into the awareness of the listeners. So where can people get their hands on it?
go on to our website to www.collectivedarkness.com. You can also go on Amazon and just find it there if you just type in Collective Darkness. But yeah, so it's pretty easy to find. And you probably find it just searching on Google. But
Okay.
go onto the website. I think that's the best one. Go to www.collectivedarkness.com. And then you can see all of the cool authors you can look at. You can check out their bios. We have a little bio page and like the cover art and everything. So
Is there something about like horror short stories that stands out to you? I'm kind of curious, just because
yeah.
as you mentioned, you're mentioning a lot of Poe and Lovecraft, and those are men not necessarily known for writing lengthy horror. Yeah. So what about the horror in the short form that makes it appeal to you?
So I have read, some longer stuff, and I think it can be good. But what appeals to me so much about short stories is that you start immediately in the action, and it's just constant, like this constant horrific thing. There is character development, but it seems to be like you have to know this stuff, and now let's get into the fright. But like with a book, it can do that, but just because of pacing, it seems to you have to do other elements to keep it going strong. So I just love that quick bite, usually like no more than 50 pages. 50 pages can, or, and I guess that like some of H.P. Lovecraft's was pretty long too. There was like a few that were 100 pages, but, nothing too novel length, I think, because then it keeps that quick pace. I like that tension.
Fair enough. Yeah, definitely trims all of the fat and just it's lean and mean and scary.
Yes, exactly. My favorite.
Yeah, and I find that a lot of times I'm surprised because I'm not usually the biggest short story guy, just generally speaking, which is a weird thing because I end up teaching lots of short stories in high school. But I really enjoy horror short stories probably more than other genres even, because to me, if you can scare me in just a few pages, then you can do something really impressive. And I feel like a lot of writers, their very best work ends up coming out in their short fiction. Like even like big names like Stephen King. Like to me, one of the very best things he's ever written was a short story called N. And so I just love when I get to get scared by something without it having to take hours and hours of my time to get to the creepy bits.
I completely agree. I hope this doesn't anger a lot of people, but I'm not a huge Stephen King fan because I really like his ideas. I like how they start a lot, but he just goes on for a long time.
Yes,
and so I'm just like, but I like his short story. Any short story I've read of Stephen King, I have liked. But yeah, anything like I really liked The Stand, but it was really long, and I like long stories. Like I love Name of the Wind, but that's fantasy. It's like, and it's supposed to be long, so it's
Stephen King tends to I would say get a little bloated in a lot of his writing.
I think that's a perfect word.
Yeah, I think that maybe with him we have the unfortunate side effect of him being so famous that editors are afraid to help him edit his work down and make it meaner and leaner.
Yeah.
And so then we end up with just, these massive novels that just meander for a while, like The Stand or Under the Dome or It, when, his shorter stuff tends to be a lot better. Like
Yeah.
Misery. Misery is a much shorter novel, and it's just mean the whole way
It's a
through.
lot shorter. Yeah. Or Children of the Corn,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he definitely delivers with some very impressive short stories. I don't think it's a surprise that a lot of his short stories end up being turned into movies when a lot of his books may or may not.
Right. It's like a hit or miss.
So I guess, are there other horror writers, outside, moving away from the anthology specifically, other horror writers that you really enjoy their short work?
Maybe, well, not for short fiction, but like another, like a longer story that works for me a lot is Bram Stoker's Dracula. So that's, not really short stories. But because like another horror writer, I didn't really get it. Oh no, this is, I didn't really get into a lot of Richard Matheson's short stories, but they seem more sci-fi. So yeah, but I like, and then Frankenstein was, I really liked Frankenstein, and I could see that, like it being a short story compared to its novel length. Yeah, for horror, I think, I like the Dracula, Anne Rice, Mary Shelley, but those are not necessarily, short stories.
That's totally fine. Okay, so one thing that came up in our discussion prior to having you on the
Yeah.
on the podcast, it was just this idea that you're not really that into things like horror movies. So do you have any thoughts about like why horror movies don't work when like horror literature and some other media do?
Right. So I think my biggest problem with horror movies, especially, is the fact that there's this standard. They have this, it's always about jump scares. It's always about like quick flash, let's cut you up and kill you. Like I like, the slasher films are fun, but they're definitely not scary to me. Like Freddy Krueger, like that, the Nightmare on Elm Street, that's fun. It's not scary to me. So I would never, I would consider it almost a different genre. But like some of this stuff that's supposed to be really scary, like the most recent stuff, I haven't even watched a lot of horror movies these days because I've not really been that scared. It's just, I think what it is I like psychological horror a lot. And you get that mostly in books and games. And because I can jump from a jump scare, but if I don't have some like a solid story to pull me along that's unique and fun, I'm just gonna get bored. And I also am not I don't like sitting for a very long time. And so a lot of horror movies I've found are like 2 hours long, and I'm fatigued being jump scared. After 2 hours, I'm like, let's do an hour and a half. And I know some hour and a half, like horror movies have come out that are an hour and a half long, but I just haven't gotten that scared from them. And I think that's what it is. I'm just like looking for a psychological, just like eat at me for days on end afterward scare, and I just don't get that with movies.
Well, I have several recommendations, but we can get into that after the podcast.
Okay, cool. Good.
Because to me, I also don't really like the jump scare very much. Like to me, jump scares, I like to compare that to if I went to see a comedy show and then the comedian just came out and tickled me. It's not fair. It just made me jump. I reacted to something. I didn't get scared.
Exactly.
So hopefully I can give you a few solid recommendations that might work better for you.
I'm super picky, so if you can get me to get scared, you just got an A+. I don't know on what, but you got an A+ of something.
Well, 5 stars on iTunes or something.
Okay, great. I'll do that.
So you mentioned horror video games. Should we can we jump into some of those? Because I agree. Like I think horror video games are often are some of the scariest experiences as a horror fan. So what are some horror video games that you love, and why do you love them?
So I'm a huge horror game fan, and I could go on, but my top 3, well, let's say top 4 actually. My top 4, like Amnesia, Soma, and Outlast. And then another one, which is like completely random compared to them, is Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 and also Resident Evil 1. Those Resident Evil games, they're not like Resident Evil 1's more scary. Resident Evil 4 is more like actiony. I think with the Amnesia, Soma, and Outlast, the reason why those actually scare me is that you can't really fight. You're supposed to hide and run away.
Yeah.
And that this just like messes with me. And the stories are really solid. They're really like, they're well thought out. They're not just like this one, black and white thing. There are layers. And that's like, that psychological aspect that I crave. Cause like Soma, at the end of Soma, I was just like, what the like I still cannot like it's a horrific idea, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's just that ending just stayed with me for days. Even still, like I want to replay it, but it won't have the same effect probably because I'm not as surprised. But
yeah, I having played Soma myself, that game stuck with me in ways that
yes,
few other games have. Like I still regularly just sit and think about how upset I am
yes,
about the ideas that
yes,
it presented to me.
exactly. And I love see that's the thing is that and books do this too, but it's those ideas that it leaves you with, and it's scary in the way that maybe it unsettles you because you can't necessarily fix it, or it's putting up a mirror on something that you would have rather liked to just look away from. And yeah, those are the scares that I really crave. I just want to be so unsettled and uncomfortable that I'm just bothered.
So, do you think that because they are interactive, like that maybe increases the horror to you, that you're the one who's going through these actions?
Yeah, it does, because and that's kind of going into the not being able to fight back really, because in any game, like I play games, and in most games you can kind of just you fight your way through. I definitely one of those people that just brute force things because I enjoy just getting into the action and dying a million times for some reason. But like with those games, they're completely opposite of what I'm used to, and then I actually think about like because I'm slightly actually a little afraid of the dark even now as like an adult, and so I play those in the dark, and I just imagine that I'm there, and you just like you really interact, and it's very terrifying.
So one thing, just looking at those games, one thing that
Hmm.
that stuck out was that you mentioned Outlast, and one thing I find really interesting
Hmm.
about that one is the kind of way that it functions almost as a found footage piece as well. That you have to
Yeah.
control the camera, and that camera is a big part of the action. Do you like
Hmm.
found footage horror movies work for you? I'm just kind of curious here now.
For like movie, I don't know, cause I'm this. I haven't. I think I've just lost faith in a lot of movies because I just haven't gotten scared. So I haven't really explored too much in horror, unless it was like the '80s movies, and those were just more like fun and not scary. So I don't know. I can't answer. I wouldn't be able to answer that with movies themselves, but I do like that aspect with games.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, one thing that you briefly mentioned that I'm very excited about was just the fact that we are both in an upcoming anthology that you're helping edit as well.
Yes.
Uh, you
Yeah.
share a little bit about that.
Oh, it's so exciting. And I just went through your story one more time because I read it and then I had to do like a second edit, right?
Mhm.
And it's just I really like your story and how it ends. I think you have some really good pacing without spoiling anything for anyone. But I'm really excited for a lot of the stories that are coming out of that. There's a lot of psychological stuff, which I love, but then there's also just like different takes on horror, and also people who may not have normally written horror, they've like explored that, and we've made it like really fit for that horror genre, so it's really cool. Also, the cover is awesome. We were just shown in our little horror editor chat, and the cover is really cool.
I'm very excited. I'm just curious. What is your your piece about?
Yeah, so it's about a woman who, it's called Broken Bride, and it's a woman who has to travel back to her, her where she had where she found her love and everything, and so you discover the mystery of why she woke up, not woke up, but just why she appeared where she was, and what happens at the end. So it's a pretty short piece, but it's very much like in this woman's experience of just this whole witching hour, because the anthology is called The Witching Time of Night, and so it's just the theme is just getting it in that witching time, either during the stories, or either during the witching time, or the story happened because of the witching time of night.
Excellent. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. I can't wait to see what everyone did for that. So I don't have too much else on the docket here. One thing we always like to do is just share how we have been staying spooky lately. And I can go first. So I have been watching The Haunting of Bly Manor ever since it came out on Friday. And I'm hopefully going to finish it tonight because I just have one more episode, and I'm loving it. It's a very solid adaptation of Turn of the Screw. Well, loose adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a lot of fun. Netflix, check it out, everybody. And then I also just barely started reading a horror novel called The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. I am not far enough into it to know too much of what it's about yet, but I really like how it's written. At least the prose is fantastic. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. What have you been doing to stay spooky?
So I've been reading this graphic novel it's a Cthulhu omnibus, and it's just all these different H.P. Lovecraft inspired stories, and the art is really cool. So I've been staying spooky with that, and I actually finished a series called The Haunting of Hill House, and I know I was just saying how I don't really like movies because they're not that scary. I feel like that one it wasn't scary, but it asked questions that I may have not asked before, so I thought that was really cool.
Oh, that show was so great.
Yeah.
Are you familiar at all with The Haunting of Bly Manor that I mentioned?
No, but that's why it made me think of that. I just barely finished this episode or this series, so
you should definitely check out Bly Manor because it's the same showrunner. It has a lot of the same actors. It's almost like the season 2, but they took on a different horror novel. So yeah, it's basically Turn of the Screw when Freshman was Haunting of Hill House. So definitely worth your time. It's real good.
Yeah, I will. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up our episode today. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being on the show. Where can people find you online so they can, other than picking up the anthology Collective Darkness, where can people find you so they can, I don't know, just interact with you, see what you're doing in the horror world and the writing and editing world?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook on facebook.com/Elizabeth Ann, and that's ANNE, Suggs, SUGGS. And then, or you can go on to Instagram and find it's at Elizabeth Suggs Author, and then the last name is SUGGS. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook.
Excellent. Well, since there's nothing else to say, let's just say stay spooky.
Need even more Scream Kings? Here's our obligatory shameless social media plug. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Scream Kings Pod. You could also email us at screamkingspodcast@gmail.com. Help us reach a wider audience of horror fans by leaving a review on iTunes or by sharing a link on social media. You can also support the show by going to patreon.com/Scream Kings. Stay spooky.